North Augusta Special Call City Council meeting for January the 26th, 2026 to order. It's great to see everybody. So y'all get a twofer tonight. So after we have our regular special call city council meeting, we will adjourn and then we will open up our regular scheduled study session. So at this point, you are welcome to join me in prayer. Dear God, I ask that you'll be with this council as we begin our meeting. Give us guidance on your perspective and the right priorities as we do the work of the city. I ask that you give each of us discernment, open hearts, and ears as we strive to honor you in our decisions in order to make North Augusta a great place to live. Amen. If you're able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, my roll call starting from my left.
John Felak, Robert Freitas,
Britton Williams.
Kevin Toole.
David Buck. Dennis Briatico.
All right, we're going to jump right into new business. Item 4, election ordinance number 2026-02 to amend section 10-2 of the current code of laws for the city of North Augusta. Specifically, the amendment will add nomination and election schedule. Do I have a motion to approve this ordinance on first reading?
So moved.
Second.
Councilman Toole, Mr. Freitas, thank you. Anything you'd like to share about this with us, Mr. Clifford?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. What I'd like to start with is we have 4 items total here under the special called council meeting this evening that y'all are considering. The first 3 are all related, and then has to do with elections here in the city of North Augusta. And so as you recall, the city council last year passed an amended ordinance to change the timing of the election such that it would be on election day in a federal election cycle, so in an even year election. And so because of that decision, we now have some cascading timeline changes that we have to make. You know, if we had stayed with the spring election cycle, then you have different filing dates for primaries and for political candidates and those kinds of things. So now that the city has moved forward with a change to a November even year cycle, the 3 ordinances that are before you are linked directly to that decision to allow political candidates, whether they're incumbents or running for office, to be able to participate in that. So what you'll have there, I'll start off with ordinance number 2026-02, which is amending section 1002, which has to do with the election schedule. So if you look on your handouts, page 2 of 3, you're actually starting on page 1 of 3, you'll see at the bottom of the page there, it talks about needing the voter registration elections office nominations by convention or primary for by noon on March 16th. That's one of the reasons why also this is a special called council meeting, so that you have the opportunity to vote for 2 passage ordinance without butting up against the timelines in March. So that's essentially why there's a special call. And you also have a closing date for filing statements of intention of candidacy with Aiken County Registration Elections Office by noon on March 30th. So you'll see there's a bunch of dates that come in times subsequent to that, but the reason why you're here this evening debating this is you've got timelines that would happen in March, and that also affects the publications of notice, which we have to do as well. So that's the first ordinance that you're going to consider this evening. The second ordinance has to do with changing the date of newly elected officers. So again, in the previous ordinance that you all had, people would get put into office almost immediately after the election. And what we'll be doing, or what you will be considering doing, is changing the seated times after the November election to be in January. So the very, much like the federal election cycle, you would be on that same cycle as well. And so say the newly elected officers shall take office at the first meeting in January in odd years following the city election held on the first Tuesday in the even years. So again, that puts you in a January assumption date, if you will, for any of the candidates who have won election. And then the third item here under ordinance number 2026-4, authorize us to enter an agreement with the Aiken County Board of Registrations and Elections and some of the details there. And then the expenses are, listed out in a different exhibit, which isn't attached to this today. We're still negotiating the costs associated with that with the Aiken County registrars. Now, what I would also tell you is that we are still dealing with Aiken County on, the mechanics of how the November election will work, but certainly at a minimum, the first two ordinances you are going to be required to pass if you want to have election filings in March to be able to meet that timeline. But I would defer to Jamie Paul, our city clerk, if she has any other inputs based on what I've said.
I'm here for any questions. Just a clarification for the first one, ordinance 2026-02. That one would amend the ordinance, and then it'd just be in there, so you guys, for the deadline timeframes, would just be more of a receipt versus reading an ordinance annually during election year for 2 readings.
All those dates fit into what would be necessary for the midterms and going for this year.
That is correct, so it'll follow this
Perfect.
date.
So I'll pause for any questions from council members.
So he went through all three of them. Only read the first one, but that's okay. We're still gonna go through each of them. But if you've got any questions on any of those three, you can ask now.
One question, I don't know if you can answer this, but, Mr. Clifford, but filing, will go to the Aiken County Board, or does it go to the local party? Jamie?
At this time, we have it still situated for Aiken County. That is what you guys had done in the past, and she had asked for that to happen for last year, but I'll get that confirmed as well.
Yeah, in the past, party primaries have been filed with party officials, filing
Correct.
fees.
Well, in
then the-
2025, the parties, she requested for them to go to the Aiken County
Okay,
election.
that's a change, yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
which is fine.
Mhm.
That's fine.
So there's still some discussion about who certifies the election, whether that's the county certifying the election or the city certifying the election. That's a discussion we're also having with the county election boards at this point in time. So it's entirely possible that this city council will have other motions and ordinances to consider based on the technical mechanics that'll be required. But we wanted to make sure these ordinances were in front of you first, because again, this butts up against the timelines so that you can advertise out and say, these are the filing dates associated with the various offices.
So basically, some of the logistics of exactly the actual election day, the running of all that, we're still up in the works on that, but it has nothing to do with what we're doing tonight, which is, hey, we've agreed, officially agree again tonight, if we do, that we want to go to even years because that we expect a greater turnout doing that. Okay. All right. I'll open up for any citizens, and we're kind of talking about all three of these, even though I haven't read them all out, but that's okay. So I'm not going to, if you've got anything about any of these three items that we just discussed, if you're interested in making public comments, this is your chance. All you got to do is raise your hand and come on down. Okay, so I'm going to ask for any council discussion. We only got one that we have a motion is for ordinance number 2026-02. So there's any council discussion on that particular first ordinance? Okay, hear none, I'm going to ask for a vote. All in favor? And that is unanimous. Very good, thank you. Okay, item 5, election ordinance number 2026-03 to amend section 2-21B of the current code of laws for the city of North Augusta. Specifically, the amendment will change the day the newly elected officers take office. Do I have a motion to approve this ordinance?
Motion.
Second.
Mr. Briatico, was that you? Okay, and second was Mr. Toole. All right, thank you. Again, Ms. Clifford's already shared with that. I'll still give everybody one more opportunity. Any citizen comments on that? Any council discussion? Here or none, I'm going to ask for a vote. All in favor? And that is unanimous. Thank you. All right, and election ordinance number 2026-04 to partner with the Aiken County Board of Registration Elections to conduct a portion of the 2026 City of North Augusta Municipal General Election. Do I have a motion to approve this ordinance on first reading?
So moved.
All right,
Second.
Mr. Buck, thank you. Mr. Bradico, second. Thank you, sir. Ms. Clifford has shared with that. I'll still give her one last chance. Any citizen comments? Speak now, forever hold your peace. Okay, any council discussion? Here none, I'll ask for a vote. All in favor? And that's unanimous as well. Very good. All right, so we're down to item 7, Engineering and Public Works, Resolution number 2026-04, authorizing the City of North Augusta to enter into a contract with Greenhouse Electrical Professionals, LLC, to perform the Municipal Center LED conversion. Do I have a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved.
Okay, Mr. Tool, second. All right, anything you'd like to share about this, Mr. Clifford?
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Council. So just a little bit of history here. Public Works had requested, was successful in earning this grant through the South Carolina Energy Office. It's called the EECBG, Energy Efficient Conservation Block Grant. Many grants that the city competes for are match grants, meaning that you're going to contribute anywhere between 10 to 50% of the total cost of the project. This is a great project because it doesn't require a match at all. So it's a zero match grant from the state. And so what this would allow us to do is retrofit a number of the lighting fixtures here inside the building to LED. Tom Zeser would probably be able to tell you that a lot of these lights are getting hard to replace as far as finding the right lights and ballasts that are associated with those. And so this would allow us to lower our energy costs for this building and allow us to be able to have parts that we can replace more readily as time goes on. So we went through a public bid process for contractors. This grant consists of money for materials and monies for contract costs to do installations. So it went out to bid, and we had a low bid of $36,900.72, which is under the $50,000 cap that we had for contract services. So our request to the City Council is to allow us to move forward with this contract.
Any questions for Ms. Clifford?
This is going to include the elevator.
That answer is no.
Thank you, sir.
All right, no question for him. Any citizen comments? Yes, sir. Sir, I need you to come on down, if you don't mind. I'm sorry. I just like make people use that new railing we put up. I still think that's one of the best things we've ever done. And you've been here before, so now I'm going to ask you to state your name and address, if you don't mind.
Richard Keener,
Yeah.
321 St. Julian Place.
Thank you, Mr. Keener.
My question was, how many proposals were received in the bid?
Stay up here in case you got another question.
Sorry, I intended to include that information for council's information. There were 4 proposals received. The bids ranged from the low bid of $36,900.72 to a high bid of $93,412.48.
Answer your question, sir? All right, very good. Thank you for asking. Any other citizen comments? Sorry to make you have to come down. All right, any other council discussion? Dennis, you sure? Okay, you gave me a little to the left there. All right, hearing nothing else, I'm going to ask for a vote. All in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, we have zipped along with that. We are going into an adjournment at this point, and then we'll reopen in just right after this for a study session. So we stand adjourned. Thank you. All right, good evening. I'd like to call the North Augusta City Council study session for Monday, January 26, 2026 to order. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to our city administrator, Mr. Jim Clifford.
Mr. Mayor and Council, as is our practice, we'll do an agenda review first, followed by department details, and then followed by a focus item, which in this case will be about economic development in the Riverside Village, which we'll have Linda give an update on from the financial perspective. So with that, I suspect the agenda will take the longest amount of time this evening as opposed to the focus items, so we'll go through there and start now. So under old business, we'll start with planning and development, ordinance number 2026-01 to amend the map. I believe actually should be new business, shouldn't it be, Jamie, or is that an old business?
Old business, second reading.
Okay, thank you. Ordinance number 2026-01 to amend the zoning map of the city of North Augusta for land owned by Henbell McDonough HFT. And this is going from PD to general commercial. The city council's already contemplated this in a first reading and study session, and so this will be your second reading. Granted, it's been a solid time between the two readings, but this is something that the council's debated. But Tommy Paradise is here, so if there are any specific questions to this, I can certainly have him ask those or answer those, but I'll go ahead and pause for that.
It's a development in Mortontown next to Publix.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
So everybody's familiar with that, where that is. Okay.
The next item here under old business will be election, ordinance number 2026-02, and these next three will relate to the three ordinances the city council just debated and passed. So the first will be ordinance number 2026-02, amending section 10-2 of the current code of laws for the city of North Augusta. Specifically, the amendment will add nomination and election schedule, and that will be the second reading. Kelly Zier was not able to be here this evening as our city attorney, but he would advise you that there's a minimum of 6 days required between readings for elections. And so by passing the first ordinance this evening and then considering next Monday, that meets the minimum time requirement for city council to pass that ordinance if it so chooses. The next item will also be under election ordinance number 2026-03, amending section 2-21 parentheses B, current code of laws for the city of North Augusta, specifically the amendment changing the date of the newly elected officers to take office, second reading. And then lastly, under new old business, election ordinance number 2026-04, partner with the Aiken County Board of Registration and Elections to conduct a portion of the 2026 City of North Augusta Municipal General Election, second reading. So that would conclude all the old business at the agenda, and I'll go ahead and move into new business, barring any questions on old business. I'm going to have Tommy sit here just in case there are questions on the PD. So under item number 10, planning and development, ordinance number 2026-05 to approve the revised general development plan of the 195.39 plus or minus acre Hammond's Ferry planned development located on the west side of Georgia Avenue between the North Augusta Greenway and the Savannah River. Revisions relating solely to Phase B of such revised general development plan. First reading, so I believe you have a number of those items in your packet, but this is what was discussed at the most recent Planning Commission that Tommy was able to work through. And so the Planning Commission heard an amendment to the general development plan. So if you're familiar with Riverside Village, which I know you all are, you have a number of parcels, and those parcels are dictated as far as what is supposed to be on those parcels as far as accepted uses. And so the city has proposed, which we'll go into greater detail in a future item here on the agenda, but essentially the city proposed to change the usage of parcel D, which is an unencumbered piece of property that's catty corner from the entrance to the stadium. That's currently where the construction trailer is for Fansler. And so ultimately there was a request made for the Planning Commission for us to have the city council either approve or disapprove the general development plan change. City Planning Commission heard the city's request and voted 4-1 to recommend the general development plan change, which would allow for the ownership of the city for public use. So I brought Tommy here. If there are questions specific to the general development plan and the action that was considered by the Planning Commission, this is a good time to ask those questions. But if you have questions specific to what's going to go on parcel D, I would ask you to hold those questions until we consider item number 12.
So what exactly does for public use mean? And just kind of, because I'm wondering if these two things are going to intercede. Does the actual approval of the purchase automatically approve or dictate what we put there?
The purchase does not dictate what goes there. That's a separate entity. And actually, and I'm sorry, boss, but it's not rezoning it to public use. It'll be allowed to be used for public use, but it's allowing, it's changing what can be constructed on there to what the city wants to put on there. And that's the change.
So what was it originally zoned for?
Well, originally, and it was approved for about a 70,000 square foot office and residential back in 2017 that was never built. And most recently, it's 22 single-family attached and 2,600 square feet of commercial.
So now we're moving to just commercial office space. Is that what we're looking at?
Yes, sir, and that is consistent with the previous development plan for there. If you look at the history of Riverside Village, Parcel C, which is across the street, was supposed to be a 5-story office building. Well, now that is residential, 5 stories with first floor commercial. And then this one would be the 4-story, maybe, if there's that much money involved, but could be, is the office building. It was supposed to be on the other corner. So if you look at the history of it, you're just kind of flipping corners there.
So basically changing the usage purpose of any given parcel down there is just as easy as proposing it and getting a vote?
Well, that's requires actually more work to do that in Riverside Village because it has an ordinance requirement. And so not every action requires city council involvement. There are many actions that the planning commissioner considers that pass at their layer of discretion and then don't require movement to the city council. But anything involving Riverside Village, because of the complexity involved and because of the way our ordinances read, requires us to bring it to the city council for consideration.
So if the city were so moved at some point to use it for something different other than what it was purchased for, that could be done, correct?
From a planning and zoning perspective, potentially, but right now what you're considering is for this to be commercial space.
What I'm more or less trying to get at is, like, most of the power rests with the council. So even if we bought it at commercial space and we wanted to rezone it for something else, there's nothing stopping us but us. I mean, like, if it's ours and we own it, who is going to sue us for doing something different with it? Like, what is going to be the conflict?
I think it depends on funding, Councilman. So at the end of the day, if the pot of money that the city council uses is, say, the Department of Energy settlement funds, which were laid out by the state legislature for cyber infrastructure, and the city council had decided they wanted to do something different with that property, then I would suspect they would be required to reimburse the fund based on what was purchased or what was outlaid. So I think that would be a requirement. And as your city administrator, I don't necessarily have a fund site at this time to be able to draw into to meet that requirement.
I understand. Thank you. Just so I'm clear, as I understand it right now, I am not so certain that we couldn't from what I've been told by people that are not on this council, but other people in government that are higher up than us, those funds could be redesignated to some sort of process if we wanted to. Do you know that to be correct?
I do not.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Any citizen comments?
Mr. Mayor, we're on a study session, so I don't
Oh, yeah,
forget
one thing.
citizens' comments.
Thank you. February 2nd.
I'm sure we'll get plenty next week.
Trying to get you up in the quill ahead of us. Okay. All right. Go next one.
So next item, and if there is a change, and for education, I know we have a number of fairly new or newer council members on here that have not had to vote on Riverside Village, things in a routine kind of way. As we go through Riverside Village, anytime we change the usage within Riverside Village or make major modifications to that plan, that normally dictates a change to the master development agreement and sometimes to the master parking agreement. So I have a placeholder here based on our outside counsel, Joe Lucas, is working up a master development agreement amendment. I think it'll be the fifth amendment is what we're looking at. And so we're prepared to show it either next council meeting or the council meeting thereafter. The master development agreement is not a requirement for you to pass the ordinances that are before you, but that's going to have to go in conjunction with those items. So if Riverside Village gets a lot of eyes on it and a lot of documents and legal documents that govern what can be done in Riverside Village, master development agreement is one of those documents. And so I would expect that you're going to see a master development agreement changing amendment from Joe Lucas here likely next week. So the next item is item number 12 under administration resolution number 2026-05, authorizing the city to purchase real estate located within Riverside Village, specifically parcels B and D. And I would ask Ricky up in IT to go ahead and put the slides up. I just did a couple of background slides for this. Really more is, I know we have folks watching tonight, but also as a reminder for council members. So these are essentially most of the slides that I presented on the 8th of December last year for the council to consider. So just as to reorient you to what the action is that's going to be coming before you. So that's next slide, please. So again, we have three separate lines within the Department of Energy funds. The $2 million for transfer station, which has been completed. What you're discussing and what you will debate is the cyber infrastructure and then the new Savannah Bluff Lock and Dam. Next slide. So to orient everybody here, parcel D is an unencumbered parcel there as you are at the traffic circle at the bottom of Center Street across from the stadium. And parcel B is also known as the stadium deck, which is privately owned. That's the only deck out of the three decks that's privately owned. So the hotel deck, as we call it, directly across from the Crown Plaza is owned by the city. And what was formerly known as the Medac deck directly across from City Hall is also owned by the city. So parcel B is the only privately owned item that's down there as far as from a parking perspective. Next slide. So as I showed in the Planning Commission, and I believe I also showed with you all, again, the base footprint based on the current wetlands delineation. And again, this may shrink or grow depending on what the wetlands delineation is with our new study that's going to be accomplished this year. But based on the historical data that we had from 2013, that's roughly the size, shape of the building that would fit inside parcel D and not disturb the wetland buffers. Next slide. So I had requested guidance to allow for us to coordinate council actions for the purchase of those parcels, which the guidance I received from the council at the time was to move forward. And so that brings us to here. Next slide. And I had, the mayor had asked me to talk about a little bit about what this looks like. I know there were some citizen comments about data center versus cyber center. So, I think I explained that in some detail at the Planning Commission. But again, just for your edification, this is not a building filled with computer servers that doesn't have any people in it. And when you think about what a data center is, essentially you see some of those going up in the region. Aiken County has some. Columbia County is debating those now, and Augusta Richmond County is also debating the inclusion of data center. But a data center is essentially a large building that is temperature controlled through a variety of means, but hosts other people's computers. So every time you do Google search, when you get on Facebook, when you get on a social media site, and the processing power of that occurs offsite, those are the kinds of places that those things occur. What I have here is a model of some of the places that we've looked at from a cyber perspective, and this is the Beaufort Digital Corridor, which is down in Beaufort, South Carolina. And this is a two-story building. They have this down in near their downtown area, and so that's the outside, and the bottom right pictures are inside, and that's part of their incubator space. And so that's what a kind of scaled-down cyber infrastructure looks like, at least to the city of Beaufort. Next slide. And then also here in our own backyard in Aiken County, City of Aiken, using the exact same Department of Energy settlement funds, is building a facility in their downtown. They have $20 million to work with. I'm not sure of their parking per se, but I know that this is being designed and built by a number of local firms. You can see there on the screen, and that is scheduled to open later this year. And they have a tenant, I believe it's already been announced, that Savannah River National Lab will be occupying, at least part of that building for a lease. Next slide. And then, what is inside like a cyber building look like? Well, there's a lot of different ways it could look, but these are two examples. So there on the left is what you're going to see inside one of the facilities at USC Beaufort. And then on the right, you can see what the Georgia Cyber Center, Security Operations Center looks like there within that facility. So what you can tell from that is essentially, some of that looks a little rougher than others, and some of it's more finished than others. But starting with the fact that you're really looking at Class A office space for a good chunk of the building to be able to house either academic or commercial uses. Next slide. So I just wanted to put those slides back up there for your consideration, just as a reminder of what the council had tasked administration to do and what that potentially could look like going forward. And so, to be fair, the city has not outlaid any funds associated with design and engineering. In order to get to a point where we can start talking about the overall dedicated cost to a building, we can look at estimates and say, hey, I feel very confident that we can build at least a one-story building, on that site. And there's also the possibility you could have a hybrid solution where you have a Class A office space on the ground floor, and you might have, a second or a third floor that has spec'd out office space. So for example, if you go to the Georgia Cyber and Innovation Training Center, they have floors of that building that are not finished that are really set aside so that defense contractors or IT contractors or cyber contractors can come in and outfit it to the way that they want it to be built. And some of that involves Class A office space, and some of that involves what we would call secure compartmentalized information facilities, so classified space where they can process secret material. But that would not be at the cost, and it is not at the cost of the Georgia Cyber Center. That's what the defense integrators are paying for to put that infrastructure in there in the space. So there's a lot of different options of what it could look like, but ultimately what it's not is a data center, and it's something that I think that fits within the concept of Riverside Village. And lastly, it's still going to have to meet the architectural review board, the design review board within Riverside Village. So it can't just be an all glass, cyber looking building there. It's going to have to meet and conform to the architectural review process within the village itself. So I'll pause. I'm sure there are lots of questions, but I'll be prepared to take those.
Jim, if you don't mind, would you just share, because again, this is totally hypothetical, but it's the one thing that around here that we all can get our head around is the Georgia Cyber Center. And just, if you don't mind, maybe give examples of the academia, the government, the private, just so people can understand. We're not saying that's exactly what we're talking about here, because we don't know that. I think it's helpful if you have an idea when you hear the cyber, what I would think in general, probably the goal might be. So
I would say that I've had multiple conversations with the Georgia Cyber Center and also with a number of academic institutions here inside the state of South Carolina. And so ultimately, a couple things to put on the table first, which is, the Georgia Cyber Center leadership and I have discussed, what it could be. And what I stressed from the get-go is it is not a competitive aspect. It's not something that we're going to compete against on a, multi-million-dollar investment that the state of Georgia made. They made a state-level investment, not a local investment, in their cyber center. They have a lot of square footage over there, but there are certainly some partnership opportunities that exist. And the way that the Georgia Cyber and Training Innovation Center is established is they look at the three-legged stool model. So they have government, they have academia, and they have commercial. So on the academic side, if you look over there, everybody that works inside that building, that's just part of the staff of the building, is an Augusta University employee. They're all AU folks. They host AU cyber classes, so they're not on the Somerville campus. If you're involved with cyber education at Augusta University, you get the vast majority of your classes down at the Cyber Center there in downtown Augusta. then you also have a government component. So there's a large field office, the GBI, Government Bureau of Investigations, their cybercrime element has an enormous footprint in the Georgia Cyber Center. And there's definitely a lot of things that happen there. And could I envision us hosting a state level asset here in South Carolina along those lines? Absolutely. They also have federal space in there for folks who are out of the DC office, and also for Fort Gordon has an element that's over there as well. And then lastly, you have commercial. So, and that commercial takes a lot of different shapes and sizes. So you have large defense integrators. Like right now, I think the largest client over there is Peraton. They have one of the major contracts at Fort Gordon for either our cyber or NSA Georgia. I'm not sure which, but I know they have a large contract over there. So they have space in the Georgia Cyber Center. And then you also have some incubation space, which is kind of open floor plan space for small companies to go and have a minimal startup cost to be able to try the things that they're trying to do, whether that's coding or coming up with devices or services. And then when they get to a certain maturity level, they spin out from that office space into other office space, either there in the Georgia Cyber Center or elsewhere. So those are some of the kinds of aspects that we see. And the Beaufort Digital Corridor, we want to talk to them because it's a much smaller operation relative to Georgia's, but they have some of the same modeling there. They have a relationship with USC Beaufort and their cyber training and education there. And they also have a tech incubator space. And also they have a place where companies can come and establish a small foothold in the area to figure out if that's where they really want to be or not, including some overseas companies that have established minor footholds there in the Beaufort Digital Corridor.
Very good, thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Clifford on
Got
this one?
just a handful, and I'll just kind of rattle them off, and you can address them all at the same. But I think my biggest concern, and I think a lot of folks' concern on it, is we've got $15 million. I think we know what the acquisition amount of the garage and parcel D are, which is going to leave approximately $10 million, if I'm stating that correctly.
Councilman, will probably be just under 10 million in that we're going to have the agreement reads for taxes. And, yep.
Right, yeah, so I'm saying approximately $10 million. Looking at Aiken building 20 million, I think USC Aiken's property is roughly 30 million, and I know that has more in it than just cyber, but I mean, the total project cost is 30 million. I guess first question is, how confident are we that we're going to be able to build a marketable building when this is all said and done, that we've used it for? Related to that, if we approve all of these amendments leading up to this and find during, whether it's due diligence or find, heaven forbid, after we purchase the property, and determine that at that point that it's not feasible, what's the recourse at that point that we've spent the money? Obviously, we're going to likely have to reimburse the state for the DOE fund. So what's the contingent plan there?
Can I answer that first and then go through the other questions?
I think the other two will be relatively quick.
Well, first of all, I think that there's some layers to your question. And the first is, can we build a building for the amount of money that we have? And I feel confident just looking at estimates as far as just what the Class A office space is going for here locally, that if we just did a one-story, one-story building is cheaper, as you know, to do than a multi-story building. And so when you drop the cost of construction down pretty significantly to do a one-story building on that parcel. So that's eminently doable with the money that we have. The question is, we get into engineering and architecture reviews, is can we build a multi-story building? And the short answer is I'm not entirely sure what those funding requirements are going to be to build beyond that. I think there's some hybrid options where, again, we could build a building that has occupied floors and unoccupied floors, and that, if there's a integrator that wants to come along and put something in there, they can. At a lower cost, because we won't have it all Class A office space out. As far as, what are we going to do if we don't have, somebody come in? I think there are a lot of different options. I think there are interested parties, certainly in the academic space. And I don't want to sign up people for deals they haven't committed to yet, but I think if you were looking at a crater plan, so to speak, of, hey, what would happen if we build this building and nobody comes? Nobody, we get no corporate interest, it sits there for a while. There's definitely an academic interest. And so between at least two academic institutions that I've talked to, both have expressed a high degree of wanting to put, some infrastructure in North Augusta. So could you potentially take that building and sell that to another governmental entity or somewhere else? I think the answer is yes, and still be within the parameters of what it was intended for, as cyber infrastructure. So if, for example, you had, University X had, purchased that building from the city and had it on parcel D, are they using it for cyber purposes? If the answer is yes, then I think that, we've met the spirit of the law, if you will, for what that funding was intended for. But I certainly don't envision that as the likely outcome, but that is certainly an outcome that if the city council so considered at a future date and said, hey, we're not satisfied with where we are, that is certainly something that could occur. But I would also tell you that we solve some really interesting problems down in Riverside Village through the purchase, because not only does that allow us to get some cyber infrastructure moving, but it also allows us to consolidate our parking. And so as I know that as we look at, parking technology, it's going to be a different solution if we're going to have to manage, all the decks versus we're going to have a split technology solution between private ownership and public ownership down there. So this allows us to solve, two problems at once. Allows us to solve a parking ownership problem, and also allows us to have a cyber infrastructure footprint in the city, which we've been looking to do for some time now.
So then you've answered part of that, because I do think that the parking is an attractive portion of the deal for sure. But why, outside of the attractiveness of being able to consolidate the parking, why that location and not an infill location? What makes that location attractive for cyber-related facilities versus somewhere else in the city?
So I think the discussions that I've had with economic development partners, with academic institutions, and with potential suitors or vendors, if you will, that may end up wanting to have a footprint inside the city, that, just like buying your house, it's location, location, location. And so I've taken a number of companies on road trips around North Augusta and talked about a number of our development sites, and even places that the city doesn't have an interest per se, but just that we know that commercial developments going in somewhere and saying, hey, we could connect you with the developer and have you take a look at this. And I've not gotten any interest in that. And I've also gone through the city inventory, if you will, and the courts and CID building was certainly a building that we're going to contemplate a future use for. And I took a particular vendor down there and talked about that building and showed them where it was, and they were not. Took them in the building, opened up, got them looking around. Actually, it was a large party. It wasn't just one person, and they were not interested. Part of it had to do with the state of the building, but more importantly, it had to do with the location. They just did not feel like they were nested inside, the hub, if you will, of what's happening in North Augusta. So most tech companies that I've talked to in the economic development space really have focused almost exclusively on Riverside Village and our southern downtown corridor.
And then the last question, can you just talk about timeline and due diligence? If we pass this 2 readings from Monday, so whatever date that ends up being, sign the contract, what sort of due diligence period is in the contract for us to start answering some of these questions throughout before we actually have to execute the purchase? What does it look like after that?
Well, there's a timeline for purchase of the property is really, I believe, set for 1 May. So the due diligence period has already been ongoing as far as our coordination with the sale of the property. But the city council will still have multiple touch points on actions on that location. And I can kind of walk through, if you will, the things that you're going to see, so that you're going to have to vote on. So, one is the master development agreement, which may be, hand in hand with this or may come at a follow-on meeting. A master parking agreement amendment is another thing that you're going to have to change. The city council is also going to have to select an architect. So we're going to go to market and get an RFQ, request for qualifications on the street, and do a down select for an architect. And I'm going to have to come back to the council and say, this is the architect that we've selected or that we recommend that you'll select. We're also going to have to come back to you and get a budget approved for the overall project and to select a general contractor and through which methodology, whether that's low bid or CM risk or any other kinds of things. But to answer your baseline question, if there are specific things that the city council is concerned about from a costing perspective and getting some estimates, we can certainly do that. But the timeline is going to be fairly tight in that they're looking to have closing by 1 May. And right now, this is what we've negotiated with Greenstone, and they may choose, if this doesn't go through on this timeline, they can choose to extend those terms, or they could choose not to. And I'm not entirely sure what their disposition is at this point in time, but I can tell you from a value proposition perspective, I know that the parking deck was at least $8 million to build, and I think it was closer to 9. And the fact that we can get this plus an unencumbered property for $5 million plus, tax relief is a beneficial deal for the city from a parking perspective and also from a future cyber perspective.
Thanks, Jim.
Couple quick questions. Good question about the due diligence. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. So we get under contract. Say a month goes by, we do some studies. We do, look at architecture and all that type stuff, and we say, hey, this is not feasible. We can just back out the contract, correct? We don't have to move forward with the purchase.
I would say after the city council passes the second reading of this ordinance, that basically vests that authority with me as your city administrator to pursue the contract closing. And as far as, the types of due diligence, what I would tell you is, we're not going to be doing an additional environmental study because there's no environmental study that's required. And a lot of times we deal with due diligence, it has to do with properties that have structures on them, or properties that, you don't know anything about because you're going through and going there, but that's a property the city knows an awful lot about. The city's been involved with that property for a very long time. I don't think we're going to get any major surprises going through this process. If, however, if you wanted to have a follow-up from administration about, hey, we would have to, in order to have a reliable, costing data estimate, we'd probably have to pay for it. So I can look at IEEE, I can look at a lot of different industry websites and say, hey, the range of Class A construction costs, is this entire range here, and I could either best case or worst case, all kinds of things. But ultimately, it would take, somebody who's, in the market locally to do up some draft plans. And I don't know if that's going to be done before the 1 May closing date that's proposed here on the document that's proposed.
All right, I guess let me kind of reword that. So not maybe an environmental study, but like a soil impaction. Anytime you do site work, that has to be done. So say that we move forward, we get that done, and then they say, you know what, we can't build on this property. We can cancel before our due diligence ends and get out of the contract.
Well, I think it depends on that was not part of the due diligence the city had considered. If that's something that the city council wants to put in there as a requirement, but that would definitely push the timeline. I know exactly what it took for us to get, soil compaction studies with the public safety headquarters. That'll take a little bit of time. Plus, we'll have to get a new contract to get somebody on there.
I'm just putting my real estate hat on because that's what I do. I own a real estate company, and I just want to make sure that we're not like legally tied into something, and all of a sudden we can't build something, and then we're in court.
I think also as part of what Cranston looked at for us, that wasn't just an exercise on a piece of paper. They went physically down there. They actually had to get a approval from Greenstone as the owner of the property to physically go down there and do their own site work as far as the preparatory to figure out what it would fit. So I can certainly go back and ask Cranston exactly what parameters they used. Certainly the dimensions of the building was what they were hemmed in on based on our development code and the wetlands delineation buffer. But as far as, hey, the specifics of why it would take this size building, I could certainly go back and get some additional clarification from Cranston.
Perfect. 2 more questions and I'm done. There's a gully. It's probably 30 yards from the street. I'm assuming that the building would go up to that gully. We're not trying to put something, I'm not going to use the word still.
Can you go back to if Ricky Jones could put up the slides, that'll show you, again, that's the maximum buildable footprint of that site. Slide 4, please.
I just want to make sure that, if we build something that we're building it on flat and not trying to, because the extra engineering and extra costs would run over. If we're having to say it's flat here and it's lower here, we'd have to build up some type of, understand what I'm saying?
I do. But there's a lot of different construction techniques. They could do piers, they can do retaining walls, they can do any number of engineering things. But if you looked at my GPA from college on engineering, you'd probably not ask me those questions. And I'll see if I can get an actual professional to give you a good low on it. But that's the number one thing that we were looking at as we laid out the building footprint, had everything to do with making sure we were not impacting the wetlands. So again, that's the largest footprint, ground footprint that we'd have to have or could fit onto that property based on what we have today. And that may, you know, again, if we do, as we do the wetlands delineation study, if the wetlands have moved like say 2 feet, guess what? The total square footage of that building is going to decrease because we can't build within 25 feet of that buffer. If you go down and look at that piece of terrain that's there now, I understand what you're saying, but I don't think we're looking at a significant drop off or gully based on what the proposed footprint is. Because we want this to face essentially right on the sidewalk. So that doesn't impair the sidewalk, but just like you're in any kind of, you know, city or urban canyon, you're going to have the buildings, you know, right up near the sidewalk. So it's right there.
Perfect. One more question, and then I'm done. So the current owner built that facility, the parking garage, and also acquired that piece of property, parcel D, for probably a little over $9 million, I would think, total.
Well, Greenstone was the original developer of the property, so I'm not sure what their, and I know some other council members might be more educated on this than I was, of what their financials were when they bought the project in 2015 or 16 or whatever year it was. So they had all those parcels, and they have since, some of those parcels they opted to build themselves. So for example, if you look at this, the stadium was built by the city. The city built that stadium. Greenstone built the stadium parking deck. You have a private entity that built the Crown Plaza. A private entity built the Ironwood Apartments. And then Greenstone also sold off recently parcels that are being under construction now. So GH, C&K, the apartments and the retail that's going in. So they're still listed as a master developer, but as far as the actual number of parcels that they currently own in the village is limited. They own parcel I, which is just southwest of the Crown Plaza, which they've submitted plans for, but they have a limited number of properties that they currently are outright owning there in the village.
Okay. So basically, they spent $9 million, and we're going to get it for $5 million, so they're taking a $4 million hit. I'm just curious of why they're willing to do that.
The reason I would...
Do they need the money?
I think there's a couple of reasons. And again, I'm not educated to tell you exactly what the Greenstone financial portfolio is, but you know, the tax cost of that deck is high. And so for him, when Greenstone looks at, you know, the parking revenue, which they get revenue off that deck, does not substantially offset the tax bills they get both from the city and the county to operate that in a private manner. So it's costing him money, I think, essentially to run that deck, as opposed to...
Makes sense.
If we,
I mean, that's what I figured. So if we don't buy it, then what would happen, you think? You think they'd sell to somebody else?
I think that's entirely possible. I don't know I'm not sure what the market is or who they would sell to. And also, again, based on the current level of housing and what's been successful in Riverside Village, I can't speak for the likelihood of parcel B, but I could say that I think it's highly likely that parcel D could go as is. So ultimately,
Sell it off.
he can sell that to a different, and do that. The South City Partners, who is the group that's doing the current builds, they're apartment folks. They're not townhome folks. So that's why they're likely not building on parcel D right now. But they can find somebody else to build that and add those folks on there. So I'm pretty confident that whether it's the city or whether it's a private developer, something is going to go on to parcel D. If the city owns it, then you've got accountability here from the perspective of I got to sit here in front of the council every Monday and tell you what we're doing. And when you have a private developer, you have some touch points you have to go through with planning commission and also with the engineering department. But after that, they're off to the races.
Yep. Either we control it or somebody else does.
Correct.
And Jim won't
Thank you.
say it, but I'll say it. I mean, all we have to do is look at the pattern of Greenstone. They sold the green jackets. They can be more than happy to get rid of the properties for South City Partners. I mean, they are not in the acquisition business at this point, as far as in North Augusta, which is to our advantage.
Mr. Clifford, it looks like the footprint that's there, I don't have my glasses on and that number's a little blurry.
19,870, I
It
believe.
looked like a 15 to me. It's actually a 19. Because that was going to knock 20,000 square feet off of a fourth floor.
My GPA wasn't that low, Councilman. It was, still graduated.
Mine was, yes. Yeah. You mentioned a couple just general questions. You mentioned academia. And you mentioned USC Beaufort as a potential academician person that is in the cyber business. Is that correct?
They are in the cyber business, Councilman, but I don't want to, that's not an organization I talked to about occupying space here. I use USC Beaufort as a model, as one of the models that we've looked at from cyber infrastructure. So obviously Georgia's got some spots, but USC Beaufort has a pretty mature model with their USC campus, along with what they're doing at the Beaufort Digital Corridor. So I wouldn't anticipate you would see a USC Beaufort presence here, but I think their model is illustrative of what you can do in your own backyard.
We don't have major academia in South Carolina other than USC Aiken that's close. So would you consider the larger institutions, the larger state universities, Clemson, Carolina, those people looking to get into cyber business here?
Aiken Tech.
So again, just as we talk about things in economic development terms, typically I don't tell the council who I've negotiated with or who I've talked to, and I will provide that same kind of top cover, if you will, to our academic partners, other than to say that I have been in dialogue with a number of government and academia partners. And again, none of those are promises, or we don't have LOIs. This is just, hey, if this is what we're considering, what would you think about it, and what would your interest be in participating in something along those lines?
Could you speak briefly on the parking garage B, on parcel B, of the sustainability of it with parking income?
My vision with parking inside any of the decks really is to have them pay for themselves at a minimum, as far as the maintenance, so the elevator maintenance costs, the lighting, we're going to have to change out the elements associated with the swing arms. I think there's some other technologies that we really want to drive us towards. And so ultimately, my main goal for any of the parking apparatuses is that they're self-sufficient, that they're paying the O&M, and any revenue we get on top of that really is just a bonus. But I want to make sure that whatever we do, pays for itself. And so ultimately, much like the hotel deck, the hotel deck right now, we have an arrangement with South City Partners regarding Parcel K that City Council approved that gives us a dedicated income stream because of the parking for the apartments at Parcel K. And so likewise, there are some arrangements that are already in place and that can be added to for Parcel C into the stadium deck. And then there's also other opportunities with the clubhouse, and then also just if we have day parking to be able to park there as well. But my key aspect of that is to make sure that we can have a holistic parking opportunity here for our citizens, so it's not confusing and frustrating when they're like, how come I got to use this parking app to go into this facility, and just like 200 yards away I can use a whole different setup to get into there. That's going to be confusing and aggravating for folks. But I think that the parking revenue that we have allows us to at least O&M the decks to include the parking solutions that we have.
Is there a timeline for construction if we acquire parcel D before we have to break ground?
No, and I would say that there's no rush to failure either, Councilman. I think in realistic terms, if the city, if you as the council opt to move forward on a purchase agreement, I could not envision anything from a vertical construction perspective happening earlier than 24 months from the time of contract closing. And that would be an aggressive timeline.
Yet, before we have a building that's dedicated to the cyber community, we would have control of the parking garage.
That's correct.
That is correct. Thank you.
Yeah, and let me just say this, because this has been asked a lot, and this help you as well. For citizens, because there have been a lot of questions about parking, as if, what's going to happen. If you want to pull up our minutes on March the 18th, 2024 is when we passed. Y'all weren't on council then, but Kevin and David know. We passed a revised master parking agreement, JD, and it breaks down exactly dedicated parking spaces, hotel deck, 160 for multi-space, 260 for the convention, 5. So we have done a master parking agreement. There'll have to be an amendment to that if this goes through. But all that is on March 18, 2024, and in there it talks about the fee that would be paid for that. That answers your question. So again, this is something we talked about almost back in March 2024 as a council that we approved. So for citizens, if you want to get that information, go to city website under council minutes, scroll down to March 18, 2024, and you can see that.
Are y'all, you need to go, Mr.? Okay, I've got a few questions, of course, here. So let's say this comes off on spec, totally on budget. Beautiful, doesn't cost the taxpayers anything. We're in the landlord business, baby, and we're meeting that the rent is covering the maintenance on the building. But all of a sudden, oops, hurricane comes through, or we develop a major roof leak, building gets hit by a tornado. Oops, we build too close to the brick pond, there's a major foundation shift. And there's a major repair that runs over what we're getting in funds from renting the building. Who pays for that?
Well, it depends on you've laid out a multitude of potential worst case scenarios. So depending on which scenario you want to move to, you've got insurance is certainly one of the options that you have. And then other options are city funds. So if the city Riverside Village Central Core Fund is one of the funds that could be tied into because it's in Riverside Village. And so that certainly wouldn't be my first course of action. But as far as being in the landlord business, City of Aiken's in the landlord business. The County of Aiken's in the landlord business. Many governments are in the landlord business. And when you look at economic development as a whole, a lot of times municipalities or counties or even states will build spec buildings, and a lot of times that has to do with warehousing and manufacturing. And they're in the landlord business until such time as they're, either matured that project or they sell it.
My research into cyber, not data centers, my research into the cyber industry has revealed that this may be an industry that has a bubble. So I fear going into an industry that has a bubble in the area for our taxpayers, especially when we are building places around us that aren't even full yet. Going into my second question, so what we learned tonight was for those funds themselves, we don't know if there's a way to to go through a process to have them reallocated, even though I've been told that it's not really clear that they are designated for cyber. So we've been publicly facing and telling people that they have to be spent on a cyber center, or they have to be spent in the industry. But yet when I asked if there was a process for redesignating those funds, we said, I don't know. So those two statements both can't exist in the same realm, because that means maybe we can spend it on something else besides the cyber center. So I've also been told throughout this entire process that somebody is going to develop on that lot, no matter what. But we found out tonight through questioning that, hey, we're the city of North Augusta. We could buy that lot and rezone it and do absolutely nothing with it if we wanted to, because that's who we are. So I guess what I'm getting to now is I've got a petition that's got about 1,500 signatures on it. 75% of those are coming straight from North Augusta. A lot of those coming from outside the area are people who have commented about spending money here. We didn't have much more than 1,500 people vote in our last election. And I realize this is a study session and I'm supposed to be asking questions, but I'm trying to learn. I don't want to create another situation that makes contempt for our local government. There are a lot of variables here. And again, we learned from the fishing ban that we shouldn't rush into things because we do breed things that build contempt. And that's why we're fixing to overturn it. because we rushed into it. This is set up for a resolution. Is that just going to be one vote?
For the purchase, the answer is yes, because that's not a change to law, that just like we do with any other contract, that's a resolution.
So I'm just trying to distinguish in my head now, because I'm all for purchasing it, but where we go from there, I do not know. I do know that if we're purchasing $9 million worth of stuff for $5 million, I'm not the financial genius that some of these guys are, but I know we get $4 million worth of equity right off the bat, and it shouldn't be hard to float a note on that if the citizens wanted us to do something else with that parcel, if it's their will. And I know that we are here to serve the will of the citizens. And even, you know, if it's an emergency thing and we need to vote kind of against their will for their own good, I get that. But this is not an emergency. This is something that if we rush through, we're going to make mistakes. People are going to remember our mistakes. I don't want to make these kind of mistakes. I want to listen to what people want, and I kind of want to balance. So while I'm all for purchasing this, and I do see the massive value of giving my man JD over there all three of these parking garages to do his thing with, I don't understand the value of putting a cyber center where so many of people told me they absolutely want to do nothing. I won't let you get poached by Beaufort, JD. So I'm just asking that we just slow this down a little bit. And I know we're up against a May timeline, and I know that's important. If there was a plan where we could, you know, kind of do the shell game finagling where we purchase this and then we go back later and decide, well, we're going to designate it for cyber, can we move those funds over?
I was waiting, is that the question, Councilman?
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of getting at. Like if we float a note to do this, based on that, you know, we're getting a tremendous amount of equity out of this purchase. So if we float a note to buy this, and really honestly, if it's that good of a deal, the parking deck should generate enough funds to pay for some of this.
No.
So if we float that note in the long run, and we go back and say, well, yeah, we do want to put a cyber center there. That's the best thing for it. Could we then pay that note with the money from DOE?
I'm not sure what you mean. So when you say float a note, are you talking about taking out a bond?
A bond,
Or
yes,
a loan? Okay,
Bond,
so a
no.
bond referendum.
I'm familiar because we've got a $70 million one on the ballpark that's going to cost us $140 million over 45 years.
Well, the city council can do lots of different things, but I would tell you as your staff lead that is not a great idea from a bond perspective because the city took a hit on its credit rating in 2020, and that had a lot to do with what we had in savings and also had to do with the overall debt limit. And as I explained at the planning commission, and I want to make sure that all the council members got to hear it because not everybody necessarily got to hear the planning commission notes or meetings. But ultimately, the city had an opportunity to bond money at CPSD 5, the capital project sales tax. And I had advised the previous council at that time as well not to do a bond item because that would potentially have a problem for the overall debt load for the city. And so as we pay off, the only debts that the city currently has, the largest obviously, has to do with the stadium debt, which the city took out a bond for $69 million. We also have a bond, a water service bond, which is secured through different funding that has to do with the water infrastructure and utility, and I believe the terms of that bond expire sometime in the 2030s. And then also we have a bond for the public safety headquarters. The city bonded $10.5 million to kickstart that project to get that going, and we should be paying that bond off in the next several years through the proceeds of capital project sales tax 4. So the city council can certainly do any number of things, but I would not advise you to secure or seek a bond referendum for the parking garage at this time.
Yeah. I mean, I would tell you, I personally have no appetite for bonding anything. We have been raked over the coals over the $10 million that was part of the capital project sales tax 4. That's the only reason that got passed on the referendum, because we knew that was going to be paid off from the capital project sales tax. And the city took the biggest, I guess, risk when they did Riverside Village. And I know that was been a topic forever from folks on social media to this day, how concerned they've been about our taxes being raised. And of course, because of what's happened with this council and South City Partners and what Linda's about to tell us, Riverside Village is in the best financial shape it's ever been. So I have no appetite to bond, to start. For me
I would have to agree. I'm in
I'm
the
not
same
interested in
boat. You start issuing bonds, you maybe eliminate the possibility for us to refinance or restructure some of that debt that's already on the books. And I think that would not put us in a good financial place.
Okay, so let's explore alternate avenues. Like, what about co-oping with Aiken Land Trust? What about knowing that we can't spend this money on anything else before we spend it on a cyber center? I mean, I think we're really making a line in the sand here, where if this is done without exploring every option to do just the simple thing people are asking us to do, I mean, there's just no going back. That's just the ultimate contempt. They're not gonna. We sit there and we do all these things. We build all these wonderful buildings, but then we just say, we just want you to buy this and do nothing. You know, take the parking deck, put it to good use with the city stuff. But, you know, this is kind of a the get one free to the buy one, get one free of the parking deck anyway. Why are we so bent and driven on doing this? Like, isn't the best option for us just to do nothing if they don't want a cyber center there?
Well, first of all, Dennis, your whole thesis is centered around that we don't want a cyber building. I mean, I want a cyber building, and I believe that is the right location because, and that's not for another conversation, we can talk now, but the cyber building is not impacting the brick ponds. Well, if we vote on this, I wasn't even going to talk about this today, I was going to wait till Monday. But if we're going to vote, if we pass this, guess what's going to happen? Nick's going to be able to go fish the very day after we vote. Brick pond's going to be there. The cyber building is not going to destroy the brick ponds. Just when Riverside Village, I have notes of people, citizens, the same thing when Lark Jones was the mayor and they built Riverside Village. Oh, the owls are going to go away. Brick ponds are going to be destroyed. Harry Holcomb, rest his soul, took a shovel out there in the dirt where the stadium was and dug a big hole, a big video. This thing is going to sink. The brick ponds are not going to be destroyed because of a cyber building. So my thesis, yours is, we ought to do all that because you don't want anything to build on that buffer. I disagree with that, respectfully. So that's all I'm saying.
It's not that I don't want anything built on that buffer.
You know what?
I would like to see that land rededicated to the park. And I disagree that.
But I don't think that is necessary. It was never intended. You can, when the brick ponds were remodeled and redone, it was always intended the Railroad Avenue would be totally filled, and it was built in a way delineated to where it would slope up toward the greenway. This is not something that this council woke up 2 months ago and said, hey, let's build a cyber building on parcel D. This has been planned going back to the original. And we would have had this conversation probably a year ago if it hadn't been for Hurricane Helene pushed everything back. So I hear what you're saying, and I hear you. I'm just saying I don't agree with that thesis because I don't have a problem with building a cyber because it's not going to hurt the brick ponds. If this was a natural thing that had been there forever, then all those points I think are well taken. But we and the developers built the brick ponds. We made them what they are. So they aren't going to be destroyed by a parcel. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, but we just sit there and said that we don't do environmental impact studies, so we don't know the impact of what we've done so far. We just build the EPA standards. And also, I mean, the original plans down there was just to have shops and restaurants, and instead we've shoehorned apartments in there. So we've gone away from the intention already. Our job as servants of the public is not to do what's intended. It's to find a balance between what we need to do and what they want. It doesn't always have to be about intention. I disagree there. And I disagree that we haven't already strayed away from the original plans for the area, because we have. I mean, that's just a fact. And as far as if the building's going to destroy the brick ponds or not, we don't know, because we haven't done shadow studies. We haven't done, we haven't done environmental impact studies. We just don't know what we've done already. So there's no measuring stick to say, hey, this is what this building's going to do when it's put down there. if we've done all these studies, I mean, the first time I asked about an environmental impact study, it was for the hive going over the Pretty Water Basin. Hey, no, we don't, no, we build the EPA standards. It's not the same thing. One tells you exactly what is happening in that environment. The other one is just saying, we're going to try to make it as good as possible to keep the place safe.
Well, I think we have a track record because of what Riverside Village, that the brick ponds have flourished. So I would say we have a track record of proof that we know how to take care. We have the most dedicated stormwater people. Michaela, our previous Tanya Strickland. I mean, so I think we have a track record that we have proven that we have not destroyed the brick ponds built on Riverside Village. And everybody, this group that's against Riverside Village from day one, told us that we would. And we proved them wrong. Just like they said Riverside Village would fail and they would be taxed. Guess what? They were wrong. We did the right thing, and it's flourishing because of that vision and that commitment of this council.
We're not in the business of proving people wrong, though. We're in the business of making people happy.
Well, Lark Jones made the comment to me. He said, Britton, he said, we are doing Riverside Village. He said, we had 10% of the population showed up every council meeting. They were advocating against Riverside Village, and they were passionate. And they made great points. He said, we had 10% of the population that showed up for Riverside Village for those council meetings. Pat, I wish Pat was here. And they were for Riverside Village. But he said the other 80%, and that's what we aren't voting for 1,500 people or 800 people. We are making decisions for 26,000 people. Every decision we make is for 26,000 people. So we were elected, whether we're elected by 1,000 people or 10,000 people, we are elected to make a decision for 26,000 people that we feel is in the best interest of the city of North Augusta. And unfortunately, we can't make everybody happy. So we have the 80% is who we're making those decisions for, not 1,000 people who signed a petition, or somebody does a survey on social media. That's who we aren't doing that. We're listening to that feedback, but that's not our population of 1,500 people. We're 26,000 people.
I agree, but
why not hearing that?
but only 1,500 people voted in the election, and that's the active civil engagement we have. And I'll end on this because I have nothing but the utmost respect for everybody in this room, and I don't want to seem anything but that. And sometimes I do feel like I'm out on an island on some issues, but hey, that's me. If you can bring the same amount of people to this room next week to stand up here and say that they want a cyber center, as the people that are going to show up and say they don't, I will vote for it. Because I'll tell you what, I've been walking around the brick ponds. I've been walking all over North Augusta for the past 3 months, and I've been observing exactly what goes on behind those construction sites. I have yet to run into anybody outside of our local government tell me that they want a cyber center built on Parcel D. Not one person. Not one person. I asked a reporter today, hey, you've been doing interviews on this brick pond for going on 2 months now. Have you run into anybody who wants a cyber center built on Parcel D? Not one person he could name. And it was also revealed to me today that an FOI was done on studies done at Riverside Village. There has never been an environmental impact study done at Riverside Village with all the stuff that's been built down there. It returned 0 results. Thank you.
I still say we're making decisions for the whole community, not some people are for or against. I've had to make decisions as mayor that some of my best friends disagree and very angry that I've made those decisions. And I didn't make it for that. I made it for what I believe was the best thing for the community. And that doesn't always benefit certain people, and that's unfortunate. I guess my question is, again, because this has been spread so negative against the city, my question is, in 2021, did those 1,500 people, how many showed up for the big trash bash we had? We had a huge day, and it was on the news. We've had a contest with Augusta called the Trash Bash. We picked up trash at Brick Ponds. We did Riverside Village. We did up by where the YMCA used to be, up there where the ER is. We had a big trash in 2021. Guess what we did in 2022? Another big trash bash. We had, about 100 people, maybe? Same thing in 2023, okay? We have another one February the 6th. So this idea that all of a sudden that there's only a few people that care about those ponds. I'm saying we've been caring about them since I've been elected. And now because we've stirred up some things that people are excited, which I'm glad, my God, I'm so thankful for you, Dennis, because you have gotten people in the seats that wouldn't be here. And I've commended you, you know that. I commend Nick Hobbs, okay? Because if Nick and all the people that talked about fishing wouldn't have, if I had known that, if they'd been there in the beginning, I know there's that many people caring about fishing, we wouldn't have had this thing. So I'm thankful for that. And you know what Nick's going to do? He's going to start pulling every Friday night. I guarantee he's going to go to the website. He's going to pull up what's on the agenda. And that's what we want all citizens to do on Friday evening. If you want to know what we're doing, we want you to be involved. We want you in this council. We want you to come and talk to us. We do. We do.
I promise you.
And we want that information. But at the end of the day, we are still going to make the decision that is in the best that we believe as elected officials for the city of North Augusta for 26,000, or at least I am.
I still say it, and I promise you that there's more people that care about that parcel being made part of that park than they even care about fishing. And I've even heard that gentleman say that if they can't leave that last little bit of natural habitat undeveloped, then he doesn't care about the fishing.
Yeah. I hear you. What's our next item?
I'd say, do you have any other questions from council? I could address a number of those things, but I will just hold and say if you have any specific questions for the staff or myself, I'll be happy to take those. All right, nothing heard. I'm going to move on. What you have on your agenda is item number 13, but I'm going to slip one in. We don't have the documentation for it today. You're not voting on it today, obviously. You'll have a document to consider by Friday. But what we have is a request from the owners of the clubhouse building, which are the apartments that are actually part of the stadium. So you have several floors of apartments. You have commercial office space that's not built. And you have the stadium level floor, which is actually owned by the city. That's the only city-owned portion of that building, which is where the locker rooms are for the clubhouse. And then you've got parking that's below that facility. And so the ownership group there, which is not Greenstone, which is a different ownership group of the clubhouse, has approached the city and would like to convert those apartments to condominiums. And the staff recommendation would be to allow that to happen. That allows for more owner-occupied. There are some rules and covenants associated with that building that would not allow them to fully rent out all those condos. You have to have a certain percentage of owner-occupied in the building. And so ultimately, as we looked at it with our financial advisors, the impact on the mids, on the minimum requirements for funding for Riverside Village was negligible. And so ultimately, the staff believes that that's going to be in the best interest of the city to have more owner-occupied condominiums in the clubhouse building than apartments. And so you'll have a resolution, not an ordinance, but a resolution next week to consider, which will be part of your packet on Friday, if not earlier, so you can consider what is going to be requested. But there's a administrative action you'll have to take as the council to allow for that change of use for going from apartments to condominiums. So I'll pause for any questions on that.
The square footage of the empty space, isn't it like 14,000 square feet?
It is.
Okay. I did hear some rumbling that they may be interested in putting in like a gym or workout facility or something in there. Have you heard anything about that?
Councilman, I've been involved directly and indirectly with a number of conversations from an economic development perspective about what's going to potentially go in that space, and I can't disclose those until they actually have signed a either a letter of intent or have signed a lease in that facility. So
Okay.
I can tell you that there have been a number of different concepts that have been raised to both the developer and the owner of the building and also to the city.
I would say as an 8-month resident of the clubhouse throughout a number of years ago, that moving those to owner occupied, I think is phenomenal. I enjoyed my stay there. I enjoyed the convenience of it. I enjoyed the high density living. I enjoyed being able to watch the ball games. I think owner occupied would do very well there, and and I think if that building went entirely owner occupied, that 14,000 square feet would fill up very fast.
All right, now move back to the written agenda items. You got item number 13 under administration, resolution number 2026-06, establishing fishing access and other usage rules in the city of North Augusta public waterways. And so you have a marked up copy, if you will, of a new resolution for the fishing rules. The changes were in red. We're going to have to marry up the front language with the rear language, but ultimately, this was not the original fishing request was not a staff product. It was seen by the staff, obviously, but it wasn't originated the staff. What we took an honest attempt at was based on council feedback that I received via email, and also looking at the Brick Pond book that the mayor's distributed about what the rules were over time, try to blend those together. And so the intention for us as a staff is to allow you as the council to look at those modifications that are listed and stipulated at the very end of the resolution to see if those pass muster, or if you're looking to have changes to those rules as they're written. You know, you can make arguments on one side or the other about the hours, whether you want them before dawn or not. We specifically just written it as, sunrise to sunset as set by the National Weather Service. But again, are we emotionally invested in those hours? No. It really just comes down to the impact that you have as a council members. If you want to make changes to that, you're more than welcome to do so. So I turn it to you as the council to consider, and if there's feedback you'd like to give to the staff for us to amend the resolution as written, then we'll certainly do so.
One thing that I've thought of, maybe putting like a do not litter sign, fines will be enforced or something along those lines.
But I don't know if that needs to be in the resolution, Councilman.
In the filament discardment tubes that they use for fishing line would be great too, if that's something that we can put the bill on.
If you have a specific suggestion, Councilman, if you want to send that to me in writing, then I'll see if we can incorporate that, as long as that's amenable to the rest of the council.
I think all of us kind of we're in agreement that we may need some more trash receptacles around the Brick Pond Park area, and just kind of how do we make sure that those trash cans are getting serviced on a regular basis as well.
I talked to somebody on the Brick Pond Committee, and I think it might be great for, my suggestion to them was it'd be great for them to reach out to Nick and Hobbs and some other people who fish there. And, are there some amenities that the fishermen would recommend that maybe the Brick Pond Committee could help with? A way to get a dialogue going. So I think those are all good.
So, and again, just based on the timing of this, if the council wants to have some additional time for input, whether that's from citizens or for you all to consider, we can certainly move that as an item so it doesn't have to be considered next Monday, but we're prepared to at least have a staff product for you on Monday to consider. If you want to table that based on citizen input, that's certainly an option for you all as well.
Well, citizens are going to have input at the public comment period.
Correct, but I just want to make sure that you have the ability to table it and push it if you want to make changes based on the citizen input you may get next week.
Oh, okay.
I would like to at least lobby for the hours of being open, West Pond open to fishing, to 30 minutes prior to sunrise and 30 minutes after. Those, if you're going to fish, those are the best times. So even though sunset is at, let's say, 7:30, it doesn't get dark until much
So
later.
you would like to see those at before morning nautical twilight and end evening nautical twilight is the times you're looking for?
Well, that's a term that I failed that class as well. And so I just did 30 minutes after sunset, so.
Is that at least a quorum as far as guidance that I can work with?
My question there might also pertain to the Greenway. The Greenway hours are listed sunrise to sunset, aren't they? So if we wanted to be consistent with that, just to not have a separate time, I could live with that. But those are the best fishing time.
I just kind of want to get you guys feeling on the request by the veteran, the nice lady, I think her name is Miss Linda Hutchison, if I'm not mistaken, in the wheelchair, that I could see when I walked down there even today, and I was down there yesterday, how it could be hard to get a wheelchair up on that boat dock the way it sits, because it kind of adjusts. It shouldn't be too awfully expensive to put a small apron there and kind of a floating hinge plate that will adjust as the dock adjusts to accommodate wheelchair usage. I hope we're not getting into, oh, we got to look at the budget kind of money next year. But
Councilman, which dock are you referring to? Are you talking about the one on the Savannah, or are you talking about the one in the
West Pond.
the West Pond,
West
the
Pond.
outlet that goes there?
yeah, the one that goes out there at West Pond.
I think that's certainly something the city council can request of staff. I don't think that needs to go in as part of a resolution.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea, Dennis. I think we need it. We need to do it.
Hey guys, I'm gonna. Just
And
a
I'm
little-
thankful for that she came to the planning commission and talked.
Yeah,
Again, another example. If she hadn't come, guess what? We wouldn't have known that.
Guys, we lost a child there in 2022. I've talked to you some about it. Some of you, we got to talk over our little trip. If we can make some little improvements to that dock, I'd like to rededicate that dock to that child. And I feel like with that situation that we absolutely do not need to rehash, that child loved the brick ponds, and her entire graduating class kind of, when I went down there the other day and I was just talking about it on social media, there was already 3 or 4 kids down there having a picnic that were in her graduating class. And I just don't feel like they have a place to go get closure with that situation. And I feel like that's something that her family and everybody in our community would support.
So are there things that we need to, still need to get? So his question, are we good? Do we feel like we can vote on this?
I would agree with John. I'm on board for, the nautical twilight hours.
So you're comfortable with us voting on Monday? Is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I mean, okay.
I think all the
I think
other,
the points that have been brought up are things that don't have to be in this, but
Right.
we've made them public, so the things we need to address, right? Are you
Other
with that?
than the fishing hours. I mean, that's the only thing that was in the,
Yeah, the nautical hours, yeah.
Right.
Okay, yeah.
everything else is,
And we do need, and you'll have to change some of the wording on these, on the, like, some of these lines will have to be taken out. You've added some things, but like, whereas the city of North Augusta has determined that fishing and boating at Bread Pond is not in the best interest. I mean, you don't have that whited out. So
Mr. Mayor,
Attorney.
Dr. McCauley, on his return from his meetings down in Beaufort, instead of saying, "Hey, good to see you, great to be back in the office," the very first words out of his mouth was, "You're probably gonna have to rework that resolution because I found some problems there." So appreciate his eagle eye on my documents.
So I think the consensus is if we can get that done and get our wording for the nautical all together, then we'd like to move forward by voting on Monday. Is that my consensus? You good? Okay. That guidance you need?
I think that's good enough, Mr. Mayor. I think I can work with that.
one more point before we move on. Was there a boating provision in here as well?
There's I took directly from the Brick Pond manual. If you look at the very end of the resolution, it talks about, non-motorized watercraft and being able to use electric drilling, motors, but not, other ones.
John, bring your glasses next to me.
The arm's long enough. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Moving on to item 14, for administration, resolution number 2026-07, authorizing extension of awarded allocation of the accommodations tax advisory committee for the disbursement of revenues from the accommodations tax year 2023-2024. And for that, I will defer to our very able city clerk, Jamie Paul.
Mayor and council, there will be additional language added. Not only were there 2 extensions that were recommended by the ATAX committee, that will be from Old Town Preservation and North Augusta Forward. Those were recommended to be extended to be spent by the end of this fiscal year, 2026. In addition, there was a recommendation to redistribute the unused funds from fiscal year 22-23, because they were extended and not used, of $40,939.88. They had requested that be added to this current accommodations fiscal year 24-25 that has already been sent out. The A-Tax Committee is ready to meet if you guys approve the recommendation to reallocate that. That would go back out on the website for application.
That's what we'll be voting on next week.
Yes, it'll be built in the resolution.
Subject to any questions on that topic, we'll move to Finance Resolution number 2026-08, approving the annual assessment report and amendment of the assessment roll for the Ballpark Village Municipal Improvement District and confirming the collection of annual assessments therein for the 2025-2026 assessment year. And so, as an education piece for our council, and I know some of you are more familiar with this than others, regardless of the status of Riverside Village as far as the fiscal health of the village itself, there's a requirement for the council every year to set the MIDs, the Municipal Improvement District. And so, in previous years, the mid-level would be below what the taxable income level was, and so you would add an additional assessment to these properties to be able to pay the difference, in which we've levied across usually the unencumbered parcels, so the ones that are currently under construction are the ones you're seeing. And I think Linda's got some good news to share, and I'm not sure if she's going to do it here on this item or in her focus item area, so I don't want to. Okay, well then I'll be quiet. I'll just say that you're going to have to approve this mid. You're going to do it every year, regardless of how well things are going or not going. That's a requirement is set by the bond requirements and the legal parameters that we have for Riverside Village. So ultimately, you should expect to see this, every year. So this shouldn't surprise you next year when you're getting another mid item for you to approve as a matter of course, based on the financials that we get from the village. But I'll defer to Linda on the focus item for the rest of that, but I will pause there for any potential questions, although I think that's probably better served during the focus item. And then I'll defer back to Jamie for elections and the receipt of information, and then we're going to have two more bolt-on resolutions for y'all to consider.
For this item, they will be just reviewing the actual deadlines. It'll be a short list that we published in the paper according to the resolution that you guys would, if you guys were to approve, to be published by March, no later than March 1st.
I have two items which were not originally in your packet, but I believe you've got hard copies there on the dais. We'll make sure these are published as going into the agenda for the next meeting. So the first is resolution number 2026 is yet to be named, which is a resolution to authorize the city of North Augusta to accept the low bid from Wilson and Associates Sports Turf for the Riverview Park Athletic Fields annual turf program services. So the funding source for this is the general fund. This is something that the city council passed as part of the overall budget. We went out to market for the sports fields maintenance. We had multiple bidders. This is the low bid that we have, and so as we try to do with most contracts, make sure that it's coming here before the council for citizen visibility and for you all to pass. So that's the first item, but I'll pause for any questions on this one. Rick didn't stand up until tell me I screwed that up, so I think we got that close enough. The next item is ordinance number 2026 as to be numbered, which is to amend the zoning map of the city of North Augusta, South Carolina by rezoning plus or minus 30.37 acres of land owned by True North Church tax parcel listed there from small lot residential R7 to office commercial to general commercial. And so I had the benefit of being at the Planning Commission as we were talking about the cyber infrastructure to hear True North Church's proposal, which the Planning Commission also recommended for council consideration, which is really for an addition onto the back of their student building. In order to add that piece of construction, if you will, onto the back of that building, required a zoning action for the properties that they have. Tommy can talk about it much more intelligently than I can, but essentially in order for the engineering firm, in this case, Allen Boucher, to be able to do the work that was required, that required those, the same zoning, if you will, on all the parcels that were affected on True North. And so that's what is before you here, is that it's changing those parcels to general commercial to allow for True North to make a change to their facility footprint. It does not change the parking lots. It does not change access to roads. This allows for them to just add a facility to the back of their facility for more classroom space for the kids they already have.
Yeah, so basically the main property is zoned residential, and the parcel that they already own, that was a side piece, was back, if I'm not mistaken, is zoned commercial, where there was gonna be assisted living years ago. They got that, so, basically, they're trying to zone both of those commercial, which makes sense. Yeah, so.
So I'll pause for any questions on that one. I'd like to state for the record, this is the longest agenda review that I've done as your administrator. It's great to set new and exciting, records here in the city of North Augusta. And so with that, I believe I'm going to turn over to Jamie, who's going to lead us off to have our department details gone through.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We'll start off with Finance Director Linda Williamson.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, and I believe this may be my longest ever department details as well. Just to fill you guys in, Cycle 1 customers, their January 10th bill, it is due on February 2nd. We will be assessing late fees on February 3rd for that bill. Disconnection for that bill is scheduled to begin February 24th. Cycle 2 customers, their January 25th bill is due on February 19th. Late fees will be assessed on February 20th, and disconnection is scheduled to begin for them on March 3rd. And this follows our normal late fee and disconnection schedules from previous months. Just also wanted to announce that our residential customers that are more than 90 days past due are able to sign up for a payment plan that is due by January 31st. Forms are available in the finance office as well as online. We are currently in our winter-based billing period. And just for a bit of reference, each year the city bills our service fees based on actual water usage for the 3 winter months. At the end of that time period, the average use is calculated and will determine your winter-based average, and that is what we bill you for the rest of the 9 months. What this does is it tends to give you your lowest water usage, which is the water that's actually going down the sewer, versus your irrigation. This winter-based period begins with the start reading in November and ends in with the reading collected in February. So irrigation use and water leaks during this time are going to impact those sewer rates. If you are affected by a leak, please contact us on the customer service number at 803-442-5717, and we can get you a leak adjustment form and get that credited back to your account, as well as it won't affect your winter base average.
When does that start?
So it started with the readings at the end of November. So I think our customers are seeing this on their January bills.
So we would have customers that their bills would be double?
Possibly if their average usage is, say, 5,000 gallons, and they had a leak and their water usage was 14,000 gallons, it's going to increase your sewer probably almost by double. But we can get that taken care of. If you get the leak fixed and you do the leak adjustment form, we'll get that credited.
I had a constituent reach out to me that said he got a bill and it was over $600 out of over $600 out of nowhere all of a sudden. Are we seeing like back payments go on or back owed? Is there any reason like people would be getting abnormal bills out of the blue?
If they have a leak, if they've been running their sprinklers, or if they filled up a pool, it will increase those sewer rates, and it can get to be that high. She needs to contact the office so that we can help her with that.
Yeah. Last year, my father-in-law, he ran a sprinkler for like, I think the whole month of December, and he got a heck of a bill, but it was adjusted.
Also, I think there was some confusion about some of the verbiage on some of the recent bills.
Okay.
There was a charge for like sewer purchasing or something like that was confusing a lot of people.
I don't know what you are referencing, so if you could give me a copy of that, I can.
I will send you an email.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. All right, no worries.
Okay.
Also, just for the council, as we talk about winter-based billing, that's a city ordinance. That's something that the city council has passed years ago. This is a practice that's certainly been in place, certainly since I've been here. So that predated my arrival.
The ordinance number is 89-10, so
All
I'm
right, there you
here
go.
with 1989.
So this is something that the city has done as a matter of course for a long time. And in general, it's supposed to be to the benefit of the citizens because they have lower water usage in the wintertime than in the summertime.
So you're billing sewer based off of what that 3-month average is?
So we are currently billing sewer based on the actual water usage reads.
Mhm.
Once we get those 3 reads, we then average it, and for the rest of the 9 months, you get billed just on that average amount. So normally you see 2 usages on your bill. You see your water usage, and then you'll see your sewer usage. Right now, you're only seeing 1 usage because we're only billing based on that 1 number. Anything else? Next, the tax bills are currently being prepared, and we expect to get those out in the mail by the first week in February. And business license renewal should follow around mid-February for that. And just an update, council allotted the Utilities Finance Department 2 new positions in our office, and I just wanted to report that those were advertised and filled. Our first position started on January 14th, and our second position is scheduled to start on Wednesday. So we will have 2 additional personnel on staff to help get those phone calls answered. And that is all I have for you tonight. Are there any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Human Resource Manager Kyla Ferguson.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I was asked to kind of give a workforce update to you guys. It's actually good news. Since December the 1st, we have had 15 new hires. We've also had 12 employees promoted, whether that be someone left or we had a reclassification, a new position, anything like that. And we've only had 7 people leave since December the 1st. 2 of those were actually retirement, so on good terms. We also put into effect our 3% COLA that you all approved for us. That went into effect January the 14th, and that will be on this week's paycheck. And if you look on the back of your department details, you will see a list of our current open employment opportunities, and our list is dwindling down, so doing good.
So just so you know, poke Kayla on this for, especially for our newer council members. Guidance that I've given to HR is that there are 3 positions which we'll always advertise, regardless of whether we have openings or not. So firefighters, public safety officers, and dispatchers, those 3 positions, regardless of whether we have openings or not, will be advertised as we continue to try to build, viable lists, because those have been hard to fill across the region, not just here in North Augusta. So you'll see some that are a little harder to fill than others that may stay and linger on that list. But regardless of the status of public safety, those 3 positions will always be on an advertisement list.
So it looks like we filled our solicitor's position?
Process of doing so.
The councilman, that position was closed, and so we have interviews scheduled this week, as a matter of fact.
Thank you. Next up is Engineering Public Works Director Tom Zeser.
So if you've been reading your weekly reports from Mr. Clifford, you've seen some progress on the Riverside Village Bollard project, and that project is quickly nearing completion. As of this week, all the structural components of the bollards are in place, the foundations are complete, and it's my understanding that the contractor will begin placing the baseball bollards this week. We expect the project to be fully complete within the next 2 weeks.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Tom, but just I wanted to say that throw a shout out here for Tom because he's a people person, and I'd like to say that as we're watching the Weather Channel this weekend and watching the weather reports from various parts of the country. The city of Cincinnati was prominently featured, and the Weather Channel person was standing there, and they have baseball bollards around their stadium, but those baseball bollards are like right up against the building, so they're only protecting the facility. They're not actually protecting the people on the sidewalk. And so Tom wanted to make sure that we were adequately handling, the safety needs of our citizenry. So that's the hats off to Tom, because, if it was up to me, who knows where those things would be. But Tom really has a heart for people and wanted to make sure they were covered.
He's a man of the people.
Moving on, Streets and Drains Department, sort of associated issue, will be installing the towing enforcement signage throughout Riverside Village this week. Those signs should be fully installed by the end of this week, and they will be shrouded for now until we receive instructions to unveil them and enforcement will begin. The engineering department has 2 bids out, with bids due February 5th, and both bids are related to the NRCS EWP grant. Then these 2 bids for contract services will essentially, once we award those contracts, that will be for the completion of the NRCS grant, which we were awarded in 2024. And then lastly, as the mayor mentioned earlier, there is a Brick Pond Park litter cleanup event scheduled for February 6th. That event is only 2 hours of the day, from 10 till 12 is the actual event, and registration begins at 9:30 that morning.
And Mr. Caesar, that's on a Friday? Is that right?
It is.
Friday morning.
That's right.
That's a tougher time than Saturday. Right.
It's being done in conjunction with the, say the name right, the Aiken County. Yes. Keep. Yeah, I'm sorry, but yes, it's done in conjunction with a county event that same day. Thank you.
Hey, Tom. Thank you for getting that helping get that door on the back of the pound and getting that window in there. That's the first time those dogs have had natural light in the creation of the pound.
I don't think I can take any credit for that action.
But that's your
So-
department, ain't it? No?
No.
Well, I mean, it's public safety's department, but you wouldn't have handled the, no? Okay, never mind.
No? And I'm working on that other information you requested. We'll
Okay.
have that this week.
Thank you for everything you do there, anyway.
Thank you, Tom. Next up is Planning Development Director Tommy Paradise.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The Board of Zoning Appeals Tuesday week will have their monthly meeting.
Thank you. Next up is Public Services Director James Sutton.
Mayor and Council, like to update y'all on the weather forecast. It didn't happen over the weekend that interrupted our scheduled sanitation collection for the week. This had to be adjusted by 1 day for Monday's route, Tuesday's route, and Wednesday's route. Today, our staff come in a little late. We spent most of the day putting things back on the shelf that we used and prepared for the storm. With that said, today's route will be collected tomorrow, Monday on Tuesday, Tuesday on Wednesday. We'll run a double route on Thursday and collect Wednesday and Thursday the same day. We do ask where our staff will be working fairly late Thursday night, so please leave your roll card and your collectibles curbside. We will service you in the event that you feel like we hadn't been there or not coming. You can call our Public Services Department at 803-441-4240. Moving on to the next, the forecast also runs some of our contractors out of town for a week. We had a lot of stuff scheduled on the table to replace the aerial line at near the Greenway Trail. That didn't happen. We've been waiting 2 months for that to so we'll come back to that. So we got one contractor who stayed, and he's working in the Crestline and Lyndhurst subdivision. They're over there doing some wastewater pipe and manhole rehabilitation. They've been working on that project for about 3 months. This week, they're going to be working on Crestline Drive, Hutchison Drive, May Street, and Tanager. Overall, that project's going real well. It's about 50% complete. The project's funded by the South Carolina Investment Infrastructure Program, and we anticipate it'll be done here in the next couple months.
Thank you. Next up is Public Safety, Chief Johnson.
As you're aware, you heard Mr. Sutton refer to the weather from this weekend. We were able to give our Emergency Operations Center a dry run. We were up there staffing it, ready for whatever may occur, and everything worked out well this weekend. But also, as you see, we met back in September, October, and discussed with the Aiken Center, a specialist and a counselor related to opioid, and we approved that through the council. The South Carolina Opioid Recovery Fund Board met in January, and they approved our budget for $183,000 for that, as well as some other promotional items that we were able to get out. So that was great that they finally got that approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Park and Recreation Director, Rick Meyer.
Good evening. Tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., we are starting a senior chair volleyball program. So it'll be interesting to see if folks will come out in the cold and give this a try. I might even try myself. Stuff in that category. We're also interviewing candidates for 2 openings we have, a grounds worker 3 and maintenance technician, and I'm happy to report that there are no shortage of candidates. We just got to find the right people. Third, in the midst of a winter basketball program, it's a little light at the end of the tunnel. We have spring sports registration starting today through February 9th. Looking forward to the spring. And my last thing is on Friday, we recycled and submitted a recreation trails grant for the Palmetto Parkway Trailhead. Thank you. Very good.
Thank you. And to close out department details is Tourism Manager, Carl Waldhauer.
Evening, Mayor and Council. It's been a while since I've been in front of you. I just wanted to give you a quick wrap up on our Winter World program, which is the ice skating. It was the amphitheater over December 3rd to January 2nd that we had over 8,000 folks participate in that program. And that's just people that signed waivers. So that doesn't include, whoever may have escorted those skaters down there. I also want to highlight 2 events here in town that we have going on this week. Chamber of Commerce hosting their annual meeting and awards banquet on Thursday at Community Center. That program starts at 5 o'clock, lasts till 9, but the actual presentation doesn't start till 6:30. It's also the 75th anniversary of the Chamber this year, and that's going to be highlighted, you'll see, as the year progresses. Also, the North Augusta Arts and Heritage Center will host the Paint Your Palette event on Saturday evening here in the Palmetto Terrace. And they're going to have some events like silent auction, live music, and a paint and take activity there, and that's going to go from 6 to 9 p.m.
Thank you. And that concludes the department details. I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Clifford.
I'm going to turn it over to Linda.
Good evening once again. I'm going to just give you a little presentation on the Municipal Improvement District. This district was adopted by ordinance in conjunction with the borrowing of the bonds for Riverside Village, and was the portion to kind of backstop for the tax revenue piece of the financial model. But in order for us to add these fees, we have to bring forth a revised assessment roll to you each year based on the values of the properties. We do this every year, and we will continue to do it as long as it's in place. And the document before you is prepared in conjunction with a third-party consultant, Thad Wilson. He's with Water Street Public Finance. He's been involved with Project Jackson from its beginnings. And our bond counsel, Pope Flynn, has also reviewed this. This presentation will kind of walk you through the calculation and breakdown of the steps that are taken to come up with the amount for the annual payment for the mid fee for each parcel. These steps are taken every year in the same order. Next slide. So we will start with the first step. We calculate our annual revenue requirement. Our annual revenue requirement includes the amount of our debt payment and any administrative expenses we have. Administrative expenses can be to our mid-consultant, our bond counsel, and also staff that was allocated to that. It's not meant to be a burden on the city, but a backstop for revenue. We calculate these expenses that we need to cover, and this year that cost is $2,638,660, and you can find that under Table 1 on page 6. The annual assessment comes from the financial model. You can find this in Appendix B2 of the document. When we did the mid document, there were values agreed upon by the master developer and the city on the amount of value that they were going to put on each parcel. And that's where this total amount comes from. We're also going to look at this total in step 2, but that annual assessment, which is found on in B2, is $1,686,753. So therefore, our total annual requirement is more than our annual assessment. So therefore, we will need to move to step 2. Next slide. In step 2, we're going to look at the amount of tax revenue being generated by the district in total and then compare it to the assessment. So looking at the total assessment of the $1,638,660 and the amount of tax revenue, which is an estimate. The estimate is generated when we look at the school district millage, the Aiken County millage, the city's millage, and we do an estimate based on the values provided to us from the county. As indicated on Appendix C, the sum of the tax revenues for each parcel is going to equal $1,871,363. The sum of the tax revenues for all the parcels is therefore greater than the annual assessment. The annual payment for each parcel requires 0 for the 25-26 assessment year, as shown on Appendix C. Accordingly, the annual payment for all parcels for this 25-26 assessment equals 0, as shown to you on Appendix B and C. This is the first year in the ordinance, since the ordinance has been enacted, that we did not assess the additional fees on the properties in Riverside Village. This is an indication that the tax revenue is overperforming in the village based on the financial model. We are skipping step 3. Do you have any other questions?
I'll put that in very, at least simple terms, not financial terms, which is, yeah, it took us till 2026, but this is the first year that the revenues are higher than the floor, if you will, of the mid, and that we're not going to be assessing separate fees to various parcel owners. So it means that it's a good health estimate of the village as a whole, and hats off to Linda for all the work she's done behind the scenes with our bond counsel and all the folks involved in that. But that's a great report, and it's awesome that we're at this stage right now. So, Mr. Mayor and Council, that's, I believe, all of the items. I would like to put a plug in, though, for the staff. So as we went through the, probably since about Tuesday of last week, spent a lot of time planning in earnest. And so every department that's represented here in the room today, even ones you wouldn't necessarily consider ones that are involved in storm planning, were involved in storm planning and involved in giving us proactive steps to be able to deal with kind of the eventuality of what was going to come. My hat's off to my directors and the senior staff here. They did a great job, and obviously we're grateful we didn't have to deal with icy conditions. But I wanted to let you know, as the city council, that your staff was ready to deal with whatever eventuality would come. And I felt very confident that we could handle whatever problem was thrown at us from a weather perspective this past weekend.
All right, just 2 things. Just want to thank Jim and all of the directors. Again, let's give them a round of applause. Really appreciative. Better be safe than sorry, so commend all y'all. Another thing, just for folks to know, Dennis and David, myself, Robert and John, we were at the municipal conference this last week for a couple days or 2 days. And one of the things that we went to a session about the Dignity Index. And I told myself I was going to keep this with me at meetings. And as I look at this, dignity indexes goes from 8 to 1, and the lower the numbers is not good, the higher the numbers are better. And I figured since I probably spoke the most concerning some of this with Dennis, there were probably times that I was a 3. We're the good people and they're the bad people. It's us versus them. There's no doubt that I probably had a little of that. I do think that we also had some of, we fully engaged with the other side, discussing values and interests we don't share. So I think we did a little 7. I did a little 7. Try to give you a little 7. So anyway, just wanted for transparency to realize, as far as me personally as a mayor, how I handle things from the dais and my communication with council to make sure I do a better job when there are disagreements, that I I won't do my best to spend so much time here. I want to move up there, but it's a growth process. So just wanted to share that. And with that being said, we stand adjourned. Thank y'all.